In this video, we will see the difference between a latch and a flip-flop. So if this is a simple block of a latch, let us assume this is a latch, and if say this is a simple block of a flip-flop, right, then the fundamental difference between these two is, in a latch, no clock pulse is present, no clock pulse is present. In case of a flip-flop, clock pulse is present. Clock pulse is present. So this is the fundamental difference between a latch and a flip-flop. As an example, if we consider the fundamental latch, right? The fundamental latch is, the basic latch is an SR latch, right? So if we are saying that we are having a SR latch, if this is an SR latch, so it will be consisting of the two inputs in terms of the S and R, that is S and R. This S stands for set input, this R stands for reset input. We'll be having two outputs, that is Q and complement of Q, that is Q bar. So this is Q output and this is Q bar output. Now if we consider the same SR to be a flip-flop, right? So in that case, if we are saying that we are having a SR flip-flop, in that case the inputs will be exactly the same, that is S and R, right? These are the outputs Q and Q bar. So inputs will be the same, outputs, they are going to be again the same, that is Q and Q bar. The only difference that exists is in terms of the presence of the clock pulse, as we have mentioned earlier. So in a flip-flop, there is going to be a clock pulse, right? So a clock pulse is present. So a clock pulse is going to be present in case of a SR flip-flop. Now this clock pulse may differ in terms of its triggering, right? So the clock pulse, if you see, it may differ in terms of the triggering. So either the clock pulse can be edge triggered. If the clock pulse is edge triggered, then we say that the flip-flop is a edge triggered flip-flop, or the clock pulse is a level triggered. In this case, we will say that the flip-flop is a level triggered flip-flop, right? Now this edge triggered can be further subdivided into two sections. Either the clock pulse can be positive edge triggered, positive edge triggered. Such a flip-flop will be known as positive edge triggered flip-flop. The clock pulse can be negative edge triggered. Such a flip-flop will be termed as negative edge triggered flip-flop. The clock pulse can be positive level triggered, right? So such a flip-flop will be called as positive level triggered flip-flop, and the clock pulse can be negative level triggered, and such a flip-flop which is constructed using the negative level triggered clock pulse is termed as a negative level triggered flip-flop, right? So depending upon the type of the clock pulse that is applied to a flip-flop circuit, right, we will define the circuit as in accordance with the type of the clock pulse applied, right? For a positive edge triggered, we call it as the positive edge triggered flip-flop. For a negative edge triggered, we call it as a negative edge triggered flip-flop, right? So on and so forth. So loosely speaking, sometimes we also call this latch as a level triggered flip-flop, right? So latch is also known as the level triggered device, level triggered device, right? So by this term level triggered means that over the entire level of the clock pulse, fine. Say if we are considering a clock pulse like this, as an example, if we say if we are considering a clock pulse like this, then by the term level trigger, what we mean is over the entire level of the clock pulse, the circuit is active, and it will process the inputs and generate the output. Say if it is a positive level triggered device, so over the entire positive level of the clock pulse, the circuit is ready to process the inputs and generate the outputs. Say if it is a negative level triggered device, right? Say if it is a negative level triggered device, in that case the circuit will remain active during the negative level of the clock pulse, and it will process the inputs and generate the outputs, right? In case of a edge triggered device, say if it is a positive edge triggered device, then only at the rising edge, that is when the clock pulse changes its state from active low to active high, right? Only at the positive edge the circuit becomes functional or active. It will process the inputs and generate the output. In case it is a negative edge triggered device, right, in that case when the circuit will change its state from logic 1 to logic 0, that is active high to active low, so at the negative edge of this transition the circuit becomes functional and it will process the inputs and generate the output, right? Now for a clock pulse, if we say if we say that its positive level is increased and it is tending to, let us assume, infinity, right? So what we can say is the circuit is always in the active high state of its operation, right? So what we can say is during entire all of this positive level, the circuit is functional. It will always process the inputs and it will generate the output. Similarly, if we say that the circuit is a what we say the clock pulse is a negative level triggered clock pulse and the pulse duration of this negative cycle is tending towards infinity, right? In that case, during this entire negative cycle of the clock pulse, the circuit always remains active and it is ready to process the inputs and generate the outputs, right? So since the circuit is active during this entire level of this clock pulse, that is why due to this reason we call the latch as a level triggered device. Because even if we say that we do not provide any input to the latch, right, in that case also what basically this means is if this is an SR latch, then as soon as the inputs are present, as soon as the inputs are there, they will be processed by this latch block and the resultant outputs will be generated. So if we truly speak, then what we can say is latch do not contain the clock pulse. Flip-flop, it contain the clock pulse, right? It contain the clock signal. But if in terms of understanding of the latch, so we can in terms of loosely speaking, we can also say that latch is a level triggered device, right? So latch is nothing but a level triggered device. Flip-flop, it can either be level triggered or it can be edge triggered, right? So why when to use this level triggered or edge triggered, or which one is better? So in some another video session related to the discussion of these flip-flops, we'll see with regard to this, right? But in terms of the understanding of the fundamental difference between a latch and a flip-flop, so difference between a latch and a flip-flop, so you should be understanding latch do not contain any clock pulse. Flip-flop, it contains the clock pulse, right? So clock signal is present in case of a flip-flop and clock signal does not present in case of a latch, right? And also we can say latch as a level triggered device, right? Flip-flop can be either edge triggered or level triggered, right? So this is the fundamental difference between the two. Thank you.